On this bell work, usually with the order of operations, one of the big mistakes we see, or common mistakes, is students do 12 minus 5, which is 7, and then you do maybe 3 minus 7, which is -4, and then 7 times -4 is -20. But right here, it's the 7 part here that went wrong, okay? Because it's out of order. See, that's subtraction before really what is multiplication between the 5 and the parentheses, and of course the parentheses themselves. So don't do that. Don't do 12 minus 5 first, okay? And if you did, that's okay. We can make mistakes right now because we're just practicing on a bell work. But the first thing we should do on this is to focus on the inside of the parentheses, because that's our first operation in the order of operations. So that's what I'm going to do here. And as usual, what I like to do then is pretty much ignore everything on the outside, okay? So I do 3 minus 7. Some of you would do keep, change. Well, you're doing this by hand. So that's 3 plus -7. Some people call it double stroke or something like that, whatever, okay? But it's 3 plus -7, so here we have more negatives than positives, and they're opposite signs, so I know the answer is a negative. And then after that, just do, well, 7 minus 3. The big number minus the small number is 4, so the final answer there is -4. Now, I will look on the outside, which was 12 minus 5, so I will attach that to the work I've done, because there is no other operations to do on the inside of that set of parentheses right there. So now, well, even now, don't do 12 minus 5, because that's out of order, okay? We got to do the multiplication first, and it's not showing the multiplication, but it's there between the 5 and -4. You can't skip that, okay? So do 5 times -4, which is -20, and then we have 12 minus -20, and keep, change shows 12 plus +20, which is easy enough. 12 plus 20 would be 32, all right? And that'd be my final answer right there. I can use the order of operations with fractions and decimals too. So we're going to be seeing problems that are pretty much built like the ones that we did during the last lesson, but now they will have fractions and decimals, okay? So take a minute and copy that down, please. Here's our order of operations: parentheses, exponents, multiplication or division from left to right, addition or subtraction from left to right. So remember, it's not always PEMDAS, because sometimes division comes before multiplication, or sometimes subtraction comes before addition. It's just we're scanning these from left to right to find these operations. Now the nice thing is, since we are using calculators today, is hopefully you can find multiplication and division, those buttons, and then addition or subtraction as well. But there's also parentheses buttons, okay, these types of parentheses. Now it doesn't have an absolute value button, but it does have an, this is the fraction button right there. Remember, that would be, usually has 2 boxes right there, right? One here and one here, something like that. So there's a fraction button. If you go 3 buttons above 7, you'll see a button that looks like this. It shows N over D, like this. And that is the fraction button. So if you push the fraction button, you can actually start entering fractions in there, okay? Now at the very bottom row where you see 0, to the right of that is the decimal button. And since we are, as we saw in the objective, using fractions, we'll also be using decimals. So you'll need to know where that button is too, okay? And the nice thing about these calculators that we have, which I think I said already, but I'll say it again, is that we can type these expressions in pretty much exactly like we see them. Now, I won't be showing all the work on this, but I'll be showing some of the work here, which would be enough, like if this was a test, to get full credit, right? But, for example, on this one, here it says evaluate. I'm not going to do this by hand, okay? I will do the order of operations, though, in order, and then, of course, we'll just plug it in the calculator and see what we get. But, first thing we see here is this set of parentheses, okay? So there's parentheses there and parentheses there. So as usual, I would be ignoring this 6.5 minus business. And then I would do 6.3 minus 4.1. Now, like I said, you could stack this and say, well, 6.3 minus 4.1 and subtract it. I do not recommend doing that because we have calculators, okay? Calculators are good. They're very useful, and they will help us. Now, am I ever going to require you to use calculators? No, but it's very handy, so I recommend using it. What you should get when you type this into the calculator is 2.2, right? 6.3 minus 4.1, 2.2. Now inside that parentheses then is 2.2, 2 and 2/10. Now we look on the outside, right? So we got 6.5 minus that 2.2, which again, you could stack and subtract, but I'm just gonna type it into my calculator, 6.5 minus 2.2. And you can use the parentheses around the 2.2 if you'd like, but it wouldn't be required because it's positive. Now I push enter, 4.3, boom, okay? Now that was after 2 steps, right? We had 2 operations, the parentheses with the subtraction, and then the final subtraction right here. But I'm gonna check by typing the whole expression into my calculator, see what I get. So 6.5 minus, and then I push the open parentheses button. It's just right above 8, one button above 8, just open parentheses, 6.3 minus 4.1, and I can even close the parentheses with that button that's right above 9. Close parentheses, enter, boom, 4.3, and that's what I should have expected before I pushed enter, which I did because I have it written there. But the calculator confirms that we did this correct, okay? Okay, so this expression here has fractions. And like I said, there is the fraction button on the calculator, which is just the n over d button. That's 3 buttons above 7, okay? So it would look something like this. There's the button, n over d, like this, okay? N is for numerator, d for denominator. So when I see a fraction, I'm looking to push this button right here, right? And like I said before, hopefully you have some experience with that. If not, that's fine. But the first thing we notice here is this set of parentheses. So that's 2 minus 13/14. So I can plug that into the calculator. Okay, 2 minus, then I push the n over d button, and then in the numerator it's got 13. On the top right, you'll see that cursor button, right? It's got the arrows like this. I got to push the down arrow to get to the denominator. So I push down, and I push 14, enter, and what does it give me? 15/14. Okay, so 15/14 is what I get when I take 2 minus 13/14. And again, you could do that by hand if you wanted to, but it would never be required. All right, now we look at 8/7 divided by 15/14. Now some of you would change that to multiplication and reciprocate the divisor there. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I got a calculator. So n over d, 8. Now I go down to the denominator, 7. Now you got to get out of the fraction here. Okay, so I'm going to push the right cursor button on that oval, and it's going to get me out of that fraction. Okay, so I push the divide button. Now this one's in parentheses. I'll keep it in parentheses. Open parentheses, n over d. Okay, so I can see now in my parentheses, I'm ready to enter a fraction. In the numerator, 15. Now I go down, so I push down on my cursor, 14. Get out of the fraction, so I push to the right and then close parentheses. See that? It looks exactly like I got it set up. Enter, 16/15. That's what I get. Boom. Okay, now the calculator did a lot of that work for us, but I can go back in the calculator and just type the whole thing in as it was and just make sure that we did everything right? So fraction, 8/7. Get out of the fraction, divide, parentheses, 2 minus fraction, 13/14. Get out of the fraction and then close the parentheses, enter, boom, 16/15. So we definitely did everything good right there. But once again, we didn't do any of this by hand, right? This calculation right here, we didn't do it by hand. We made the calculator do it. And then even this one right here, right? We made the calculator do that one. And then we just checked it by putting the whole thing in. So some students right here that say, since it needs to be simplified, and usually this comes from elementary school, and elementary school teachers don't really know any math, but in any case, that say we got to change this into a mixed number, right? And so you'd say, well, it needs to be shown as 1 and 1/15. Now my question then is, which one is simpler? And I don't really know the answer to that question. It really depends. But just understand too that in a pure math setting, we usually deal with improper fractions like this. Now in real life, people generally deal with mixed numbers like this one, okay? But I assume that we would want this written as an improper fraction, not only because it's pure mathematics here, but also on the assignment, I believe it will want the improper fraction. This expression has an exponent. Can you do exponents on the calculator? Yes, you can. Now this one has an exponent of 2, and there is a special button for that, but we can use any exponent. It's just 2 has its own, all right? So what do we do first on this one? Well, you could say the parentheses. You could say 1/2. And you could divide that and change it into a decimal, but that doesn't really change anything for us. So in the calculator, we can just type this 1/2 in, okay? Now you'll remember that this exponent of 2, you could just say, well, 1/2 times 1/2 like this. But again, we shouldn't need that because we're now using a calculator, okay? So how do we put this into the calculator? Well, I'm going to put my parentheses. So I open a set of parentheses. I push n over d. So I can see the fraction now in the parentheses. And then I push 1 in my numerator, 2 in my denominator. Make sure you get out of that fraction. Otherwise, it's going to give you some kind of error right there. Okay, so I now close the parentheses. So I need the exponent button. And this one is just for exponents of 2. If you look one button to the left of 7, you'll see this button, x squared, like this. If you push that button, it will give you automatically an exponent of 2. Okay, so now I have that pushed, and I push enter, boom, 1/4. So the exponent there with this fraction gave me 1/4. And you can keep that in parentheses if you'd like. But let's look at everything else, right? I got the 12/5 minus that 1/4, and then we still got to multiply that by 3. So the order of operations would indicate that we now have to do 1/4 times 3, which we can. That would be 3/4. So now I end up with 12/5 minus 3/4. A little bit more space here. And again, that you could plug that into the calculator. I just kind of multiply the 2 numerators there. Not that you have to. You can use the calculator for that, okay? But now I got 12/5, so fraction button. 12 in my numerator, 5 in my denominator. Make sure you get out of that fraction, otherwise it's going to give you the wrong answer here. But minus, fraction button, 3, go down, 4. And you can get out of that fraction, but it's the last thing we need to enter. So I'm just going to push enter, boom, 33/20. Now for those of you that are like, yeah, I would like to see this as a mixed number, that's fine, you can. Now you could do it by hand if you wanted to, but the calculator will do it if you push this button sequence. Okay, all you got to do is push second, which is a green button in the top left for us. And then you're going to push this button right here. It shows that this is the scientific notation button. And on your calculator, you will see that it shows a fraction converting, and it's got like a double arrow button with the mixed number looking thing. So if I push enter now, it will change this into a mixed number for us. So we don't even have to think about it. My calculator shows 1 and 13/20. Okay. So these calculators are great because they'll do all this work for you, and they will show answers as fractions. So freaking awesome because they didn't have this kind of stuff when I was your age. So make sure you use it because it's there for your help, to help you out. Here's another one with decimals, and yeah, it's got that exponent right there. We can deal with the exponents. So why don't you try this one out? Try this one out, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, 1 minute, go. For the most part, I am just using the calculator like I said I would. So right here, first thing I notice is the exponent 2 right there. So in my calculator, you can use parentheses. So I can open parentheses, 6.1, close parentheses. Again, I'm just pushing that x to the power of 2 button, just one button to the left of 7. And when I push enter, it gives me 37.21, okay? So the rest of this stayed the same, right? I didn't touch the 7.2, and I didn't touch the 8.2 either. That didn't copy very well, but it works, all right? So now, that's the exponent. Now I would look for, because there is no operations in the parentheses. Now, multiplication or division, and there is multiplication between 37.21 and the 8.2. So I'm going to multiply those, 37.21 times 8.2, enter. Oh, I get a kind of an ugly decimal here, 305.122. Now I got 7.2 plus that, right? So I'm just going to add plus 7.2, and I'm still using my calculator, by the way, but when I do that in my calculator, I get 312.322, okay? Now I did that one operation at a time. Could you have done it all at one time? Yes, you could have. Just type in 7.2 plus parentheses, 6.1, close parentheses, to the power of 2, parentheses 8.2. And notice that I don't have to even put that multiplication sign in between the power of 2 and 8.2. The calculator knows. Okay, so when I push enter, I should see 312.322. I do. So that clarifies that we definitely did that correct. Here we go. 3/2 plus parentheses. I'm sorry, 2/3 plus parentheses. 2/3 plus 7/5, close parentheses, divided by 1. And could you just type this in the calculator? Yes, we could. But I would like to show you the order of operations because it's important to know, or at least I'm told. So, 2/3 plus 7/5. Let's see, in my calculator, 2/3. I don't really need the parentheses right now because I'm just working on the inside. Plus 7/5, and I'm still using that fraction button. When I put it in my calculator, I get 31/15 right there, okay? So now I will show in parentheses, and I'll show everything else too. So 2/3 plus that, and then would have to divide by 1/6. So that's the parentheses. I don't see any exponents. So I will go to multiplication or division from left to right, and there's only this division right here between these two fractions. So I can still use the parentheses and then put in a fraction of the n over d button, 31/15. Make sure you get out of that fraction so that you can close your parentheses there, otherwise it's going to give you the wrong answer. And then fraction 1 divided by fraction 1/6. Enter. And when I do that in my calculator, when I combine these two, I get 62/5. That's what I got. Okay, so we now have 2/3 plus 62/5. That's the final operation, and so I'm just going to use my calculator to do it. Fraction button, 2/3. Make sure you get out of that fraction, plus fraction 62/5. Enter. And when I put in my calculator, these two added together give me 196/15. Okay. So there we go. We showed all our work. Even using the calculator, that's fine. But now I will check going back to the original problem and just typing it into the calculator. Fraction 2/3. Get out of the fraction, plus parentheses, fraction, 2/3 again. Get out of that fraction, plus fraction, 7/5. Get out of the fraction, close the parentheses, divide by fraction 1/6. And again, when I push enter, I should see 196/15. If it's not, then I usually will have made a mistake typing it into the calculator, or perhaps I typed it in incorrectly when we were doing the work. But let's see. There it is, 196/15. So that works for us. It's good. Here's another one. And this one has that fraction in there. See if you can enter that fraction into your calculator. So do try this one out. And then we'll go over it together again, okay? But 1 minute, go. So when I put this in the calculator, this is kind of a spoiler alert here, but I got negative 12.51. That's what I got, okay? Well, let's check and show the work. And so if we do this correct, then, well, we should get this, the same answer there, okay? So when I do this one, first thing I would want to do is just focus on the fraction, okay? So I'm not really worried about anything else, so that means I really would like even not to see this minus 8.51 or whatever it was, okay? Now, from here, I will work, because I like to work with the numerator first. So I would do 3.5 minus 5.1. And when I put that in the calculator, I get negative 1.6, okay? So that actually completes the numerator. But now I need to work with the denominator, so that's 9.3 minus 8.9, and I get 0.4. Now I'm still working with that fraction, so I just need to evaluate it though. And now I will do this, and that's division, by the way. You could just divide it, but I'm going to still use the fraction button because it's showing a fraction. So fraction, negative 1.6 in the numerator. I go to the denominator, type in 0.4, enter, and I get negative 4 right there, okay? Now, I covered up that first part, right? Remember, it's still there, so we need to make sure it's included with the rest of our calculations, right? I mean, it was right there too. I just didn't have to look at it because of the order of operations, and it's right here too, okay? So if I take negative 4 in my calculator and subtract 8.51, enter, I get negative 12.51, which is what we said the answer was going to be anyway. So there we go, negative 12.51. 8.51. And like I said, I already typed that in, the complete answer into the calculator, so that's good. Do keep in mind that when you use the N over D button, you can just type into the numerator 3.5 minus 5.1. It will show in the calculator that you can actually operate there in the numerator that way, okay? And also in the denominator. So you should have been able to type 9.3 minus 8.9 just into your denominator. And make sure you get out of the fraction to type in this minus 8.51 though. Here's our objective again. You should now be able to use the order of operations, fractions, and decimals. And of course, we did see some integer whole values in there. So you should be able to do that too. But once again, just please let the calculator do the work for you, okay?